Wounded and hunted, she begged the rancher, "Let me stay, I'll repay you," in Wild West stories. The wind whispered through the tall grass, carrying with it the scent of dust and distant campfires. Clara stumbled along a narrow trail, her body aching from exhaustion and her clothes torn and bloodstained. Every step felt heavier than the last, but she forced herself forward. She had been running for days, pursued relentlessly by men who wanted to see her fail. She didn't know why they were after her exactly, but she knew they wouldn't stop until they had caught her. Fear drove her legs, but determination drove her heart. Her small satchel, once filled with the few belongings she could carry, hung loosely at her side. Inside were scraps of bread, a half-empty water bottle, and a faded photograph of her family she kept close to remind her why she had to survive. Clara's chest heaved with each breath. She had tried to hide in the forests and along the riverbanks, but each time she thought she was safe, she could hear the sound of hoofbeats in the distance. The West was beautiful, yes, with its endless skies and rolling plains, but it was also cruel. The wilderness did not forgive weakness, and Clara had learned that the hard way. As she pressed on, her mind drifted back to the events that had led her here. A few weeks ago, she had been in a nearby town, working as a seamstress. Life had been hard but manageable. She had friends, a modest room above a small bakery, and dreams of one day owning a little farm of her own. But everything changed one evening when the gang accused her of stealing a valuable horse from the town's rancher. Clara swore she had no part in it, but no one believed her. Fear of false accusation was one thing, fear of violent men was another. She had no choice but to flee. The trail she followed now led her to the outskirts of a remote ranch she had heard about from a traveling merchant days earlier. It was said to be owned by a man named Sam, a rancher known to be fair but tough. Clara didn't know if she could trust him, but she had to try. Her legs trembled as she finally glimpsed the ranch in the distance, a small cluster of wooden buildings surrounded by fences and grazing cattle. It was isolated, but it seemed peaceful. Perhaps here she could find shelter. Clara approached the main house slowly, her hands trembling as she pushed aside the tall grass. She called out softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Please, anyone, help me." She tried to sound calm, but the desperation in her voice betrayed her. From the porch, a figure emerged. Sam, the rancher, was a tall man with weathered skin and piercing eyes that had seen years of hardship. His hands rested on his hips, one near the rifle he always carried. Clara froze, her heart pounding in her chest. Sam's eyes narrowed as he looked her over. "Who are you? What are you doing out here?" His voice was firm, but there was a hint of concern. Clara took a deep breath, her mouth dry. She could barely speak, but she forced the words out. "Please, sir, I'm hurt. I don't have anywhere else to go. Please let me stay. I'll work, I'll do anything. I'll repay you, I swear." There was silence for a long moment. The wind rustled and the cattle lowed softly in the distance. Clara's knees almost gave way, but she didn't move. She needed him to believe her. Sam studied her carefully. He had seen plenty of strangers in his years, some honest, some not. This woman looked desperate, but he also saw courage in her eyes, a spark that told him she might survive this harsh land if given the chance. Finally, he nodded slowly. "All right, come inside. Let's get you cleaned up first." Clara felt a surge of relief, but also a twinge of guilt for imposing on a man who didn't know her. She followed him cautiously into the house, taking care not to stumble. The interior was simple but tidy, with wooden floors worn smooth by years of hard work and a fireplace that cast a warm glow. Sam guided her to a chair near the hearth. He fetched a basin of water and a clean cloth. "Sit," he said. "We'll clean those wounds of yours. Then we'll see what we can do about food." Clara obeyed, grateful for the small kindness. As Sam gently washed the dirt and dried blood from her arms and legs, Clara explained in small bursts how she had been running, how the gang had accused her, and how she had nowhere else to go. She didn't know if he would believe her entirely, but she had to tell the truth. Sam listened quietly, occasionally nodding. He didn't speak much, but his actions, fetching bandages, tending to her cuts, showed that he cared. Clara noticed the lines of worry etched into his face, the way his hands moved carefully but firmly, and she realized that, despite his gruff exterior, he was a man of principle. He wasn't just helping her because it was convenient, he was helping because it was the right thing to do. By the time her wounds were cleaned and bandaged, night had fallen. The house was warm, the fire crackling softly. Clara felt a sense of safety she hadn't experienced in weeks, but deep down she knew this peace was fragile. The gang was still out there, somewhere in the darkness, waiting for a chance to capture her. She shivered at the thought but pushed it aside. She had survived so far, and she could survive this too. Sam prepared a simple meal of bread, cheese, and stew, which Clara ate hungrily. As she chewed, she noticed the quiet strength in the man who had offered her refuge. "I'll work hard," she said between bites. "I promise I'll repay you. Anything you need, I'll do it," Sam grunted, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "We'll see," he said simply. That short sentence was enough for Clara. It meant she had a chance, not just to survive, but to belong somewhere, even if only temporarily. After the meal, Clara helped Sam tidy up before finally being shown to a small guest room. The bed was narrow, but it was clean, with a blanket that smelled faintly of lavender and sunlight. As she lay down, exhaustion finally took over. Sleep was elusive at first. She could still hear the wind whistling and the distant calls of coyotes. But slowly, her body relaxed, and her mind drifted into dreams of safety, of finally finding a place where she could catch her breath and gather her strength. Outside, Sam stood on the porch for a while, looking at the horizon. The prairie was dark now, but he could sense danger lurking beyond the hills. Yet he also felt a quiet hope. Clara had courage, determination, and a spark that might just help them both endure whatever trials the West threw their way. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for tonight, they had found a fragile peace. And sometimes in the Wild West, that was enough to keep hope alive. The next morning, the sun rose slowly over the wide, golden plains, spilling light across the ranch. Clara woke to the smell of fresh coffee and the soft lowing of the cattle. For a moment, she simply lay in the small bed, listening to the sounds of life continuing outside, and allowed herself a small smile. She had survived the night, and she had a roof over her head. It was more than she had dared hope for in weeks. As she got up and dressed, she remembered the chores she had promised to do. The ranch was not a place for idleness. It demanded work, effort, and care. She stepped outside to find Sam already at work, checking fences along the edge of the property. His movements were precise, efficient, and steady. Clara watched him for a moment, studying how he handled the ranch, and realized that if she wanted to earn his trust, she would have to learn quickly. Sam noticed her watching and gave a small nod. "Grab that bucket and help me feed the calves," he said, pointing to a group of young cows in the pen. Clara hurried to do as he asked, carrying the heavy bucket with both hands. The calves nudged at her, their small noses damp and warm. She laughed softly, a sound she hadn't allowed herself in weeks. The simple act of feeding the animals gave her a sense of purpose she had been missing during her flight across the prairie. Over the next several days, Clara threw herself into the work. She cleaned the stables, swept the barn, and repaired broken boards in the fence. She rose before sunrise, worked under the scorching sun, and rested only when exhaustion forced her to. Sam watched her silently, noting her dedication and determination. She was small and young, yet her strength of spirit was undeniable. He began to trust her, though he didn't show it openly. Trust in the West was earned through actions, not words, and Clara was proving herself with each passing day. One afternoon, while mending a section of fence near the edge of the ranch, Clara paused to catch her breath. The wind carried the familiar scents of grass, dust, and distant smoke from the chimneys of a nearby town. As she wiped sweat from her forehead, a sudden sound of hooves made her heart jump. She froze, scanning the horizon. For a moment she feared the worst, that the gang had found her, but the riders were too far away to see clearly. Clara held her breath, hoping they would continue past the ranch without noticing her. Sam appeared beside her, carrying a hammer and nails. He followed her gaze and nodded. "Don't worry about them," he said calmly. "Looks like some travelers. Keep working and keep your eyes open." His calm demeanor steadied Clara. She realized then that being on this ranch meant more than just physical labor. It also meant learning to control fear and act with courage, even when danger lurked nearby. Despite the constant undercurrent of worry, Clara found moments of joy. She learned to ride one of the horses, small and steady, which she named Daisy. She helped Sam herd the cattle across the pasture, feeling the wind in her hair and the rhythm of the horse beneath her. For the first time in weeks, she felt a flicker of freedom. The ranch, isolated as it was, became a place where she could breathe, even if only for brief moments. Yet Clara's heart remained heavy with concern. The gang was still out there, searching for her. She knew she couldn't hide forever, and she feared that one day they might find the ranch. Every creak of the windmill, every rustle in the grass, made her flinch. But instead of allowing fear to paralyze her, she began thinking of ways to protect herself and the ranch. She watched Sam closely, learning his routines, noting the places where the fences were weakest, and imagining how she could help defend their home if the need arose. One evening, after a long day of work, Sam and Clara sat outside on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon. Clara felt a mixture of fatigue and contentment. The sky was painted with streaks of pink and purple, and the cattle grazed quietly in the fading light. Sam handed her a cup of water. "You've done well," he said simply. Clara felt a warmth in her chest at his words. Praise was rare from Sam, but it meant more than anything else. I want to help," she replied softly. "I don't want to be a burden. I want to repay you somehow." Sam studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Actions speak louder than words," he said. "Keep working hard and we'll see how things go." Clara nodded eagerly. She understood that trust was earned, not given, and she was willing to do whatever it took to prove herself. Over the next weeks, Clara's presence on the ranch began to change its rhythm. She organized the barn, cleaned the tool shed, and even helped prepare simple meals in the small kitchen. Her hands were calloused from work, her back ached, but she felt a sense of accomplishment she hadn't felt in months. Sam, though still cautious, started delegating more tasks to her, testing her reliability and judgment. One day, as she repaired a section of fencing, a sudden shout from Sam startled her. "Clara! Watch the gate!" She turned to see a small calf struggling to escape through a broken section of the fence. Clara ran, grabbed the animal gently, and guided it back into the pen. Sam came over, clapping her on the shoulder. "See, I knew you could handle it," he said. Clara smiled, feeling proud of herself. It was moments like these that built not only her confidence but also her bond with Sam. Even with these successes, Clara never let her guard down. She continued to watch the horizon, noting the movements of strangers, listening to the wind for unusual sounds. She practiced riding Daisy quickly across the prairie, imagining herself leading the cattle to safety if danger ever came. Her mind was always alert, and she became an unexpected asset to the ranch. Sam began to rely on her instincts and observations, realizing that her time on the run had sharpened skills that many others lacked. One morning, while gathering eggs from the chicken coop, Clara noticed a cloud of dust rising in the distance. Her heart raced. Could it be the gang? She ran to Sam, breathless. "There's something coming," she said. Sam squinted at the horizon, studying the figures. "Travelers," he said finally, lowering his gaze. "Looks like a small group passing through, but good job noticing it. That's the kind of alertness we need around here." Clara exhaled, relief washing over her. She realized then that her fear had turned into vigilance, and that vigilance could be useful. As the days passed, Clara began to feel a sense of belonging. The ranch, once just a place to hide, became a home. She knew the threat of the gang still loomed, but she also knew that she had a place where she was valued. Sam's cautious respect grew, and the two developed an unspoken understanding. She would work hard, follow his guidance, and protect the ranch to the best of her ability. In return, he provided safety, mentorship, and a chance to rebuild her life. By the time a month had passed, Clara had earned a reputation on the ranch. She could handle chores alone, care for the animals, and even make quick decisions in unexpected situations. Sam began to trust her enough to leave her in charge of small tasks, while he handled other responsibilities. Clara felt proud, not because she had survived, but because she had proven that she could contribute, that she could be relied upon, and that she could protect herself and those around her. Evenings on the porch became a time of quiet reflection. Clara often thought about the journey that had brought her here, the fear and uncertainty she had faced, and the kindness of a man who had given her a second chance. She realized that survival wasn't just about running away from danger. It was about finding strength, courage, and a place where she could belong. The ranch had given her that chance, and she was determined not to waste it. And so, as the prairie winds whispered through the grass and the stars began to twinkle above, Clara felt a quiet sense of hope. The world beyond the ranch remained dangerous, and the gang was still out there, waiting. But for now, she had a purpose, a home, and a man who trusted her. The days were long and the work was hard, but every task she completed, every animal she cared for, and every fence she repaired reminded her that she was not just surviving, she was living. The Wild West was still harsh, unforgiving, and unpredictable. But Clara had learned that courage, determination, and trust could make even the most dangerous world a little safer. And as the first light of dawn touched the ranch, she knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them with strength, resilience, and hope. The days passed with the usual rhythm of ranch life. Clara had grown accustomed to the routines, feeding the livestock, mending fences, tending the small vegetable garden, and helping Sam with whatever task needed attention. Each morning, the sun rose over the prairie with a golden glow that seemed to promise safety, if only for a little while. Yet beneath that sense of calm, a quiet unease always lingered in Clara's mind. She knew the gang that had chased her before was still out there, somewhere in the vast wilderness. One hot afternoon, as Clara guided a group of cattle toward a distant corral, she spotted a cloud of dust rising over the horizon. Her heart skipped a beat. The wind was strong, carrying the sound of hooves that were too hurried, too determined to be mere travelers. She squinted, trying to make out the figures. Slowly, dread settled in her chest. She recognized them, her pursuers. The gang had found her. Panic and fear surged through her, but she forced herself to remain calm. She had learned that running blindly only led to exhaustion and mistakes. Clara ran to Sam, who was repairing the roof of the barn. "Sam, the gang, they're coming," she shouted, pointing toward the horizon. Sam's face tightened as he set down his hammer and peered into the distance. His eyes narrowed, calculating the distance and the possible danger. "All right," he said quietly, "let's get ready. We've been expecting this day, sooner or later." There was no panic in his voice, only a calm determination that steadied Clara. Back in the main house, Sam began organizing the ranch for defense. He checked the locks on the doors, prepared rifles and ammunition, and instructed Clara to help gather any tools or items that could be used to fortify their position. Clara moved quickly, her mind racing with strategies. The lessons she had learned over the past weeks, the care of the animals, the layout of the ranch, and the weak points in the fences, suddenly became invaluable. She suggested reinforcing the gate with heavy beams and positioning barrels to slow down any intruders. Sam nodded, impressed by her foresight. "Looks like your time on the run has taught you more than I thought," he said. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, the gang finally came into view. A dozen men on horseback, their faces rough and hard, rode steadily across the prairie. They had horses strong and fast, their leather saddles creaking with every movement. Clara felt her pulse quicken. She had faced fear before, but now it was closer, more real, more dangerous. Yet beneath that fear was a quiet determination. She would not let herself be taken again. She would not run blindly this time. Sam and Clara worked together to position themselves strategically around the ranch. Sam took the higher ground near the barn loft, while Clara moved to a side entrance where she could monitor the approach. She held a rifle tightly in her hands, feeling the weight of it, feeling the responsibility it represented. Every muscle in her body was tense, ready for action. She glanced at Sam, who gave her a reassuring nod. "Stay calm, watch carefully, we'll handle this together." The gang approached cautiously, calling out for Clara to surrender. Their voices carried across the prairie, harsh and threatening. Clara's stomach twisted, but she did not reply. She focused instead on observing their movements, noting which riders were leading and how they spread out across the open land. She remembered the lessons of survival she had learned on the run: watch, think, and act only when necessary. Any rash movement could be disastrous. Suddenly, one of the gang members spurred his horse forward, attempting to break through the fence. Clara raised her rifle, aiming carefully. A single shot rang out and the horse stopped abruptly, its rider thrown slightly off balance. The other gang members hesitated, surprised by the resistance. Clara's heart pounded, but she forced herself to steady her breathing. She was no longer the frightened girl who had fled helplessly across the prairie. She was prepared, and she would fight to protect the ranch that had given her shelter. Sam's voice called from above. "Good. Keep watching, Clara. Don't let them find an opening." Together, they worked in silence, responding to the gang's every move. Clara's mind was sharp, analyzing each horse's movement, each rider's approach. She signaled Sam when she noticed a potential weak point in the fence, and he moved quickly to reinforce it. The gang was experienced, but they had not expected such organized resistance from a woman they once thought defenseless. Hours seemed to pass in tense silence, broken only by the sounds of hooves, shouts, and occasional gunfire. Clara felt exhaustion creeping in, but she ignored it. Her focus was unbreakable. She had survived days of running through the wilderness. She could survive this too. Every instinct she had honed while fleeing now worked in her favor. She anticipated the gang's movements, predicting their attempts to surround the ranch. Each time she acted, she felt a small surge of confidence. She was no longer just a survivor, she was a defender. The gang, realizing they were meeting unexpected resistance, began to strategize among themselves. Clara overheard snippets of their harsh voices carried by the wind. "They're prepared," one man said. "This isn't going to be easy." Another muttered about splitting up and trying to take the house from different angles. Clara's mind raced. She signaled Sam and quickly moved to block one side of the perimeter, using a stack of barrels and crates as cover. Sam moved silently to intercept another approach. They were working as a team now, united by necessity and trust. At one point, a gang member managed to cut through part of the fence and charge toward the barn. Clara reacted instantly, firing a warning shot that made him halt and retreat. Sam joined her, and together they shouted commands to the gang, making it clear they would not surrender easily. The gang hesitated, realizing this was not the easy capture they had anticipated. Clara's courage and quick thinking had made a difference. She felt a strange mixture of fear and exhilaration, a realization that she was capable of standing her ground in the face of real danger. As night began to fall, the gang regrouped. Their numbers were still intimidating, but the shadows of the evening made it harder for them to advance without risk. Clara and Sam used this to their advantage, moving quietly, reinforcing weak points, and preparing the animals for safety. Clara's connection to the ranch had grown stronger during this time. She knew every corner, every gate, every escape route. She had become not just a helper but a vital part of the ranch's defense. By the time the stars dotted the night sky, the gang finally began to retreat. They had underestimated the resilience of a rancher and a determined young woman. Clara lowered her rifle slowly, exhaustion and relief washing over her. Sam joined her, placing a firm hand on her shoulder. "You did well," he said simply. Clara felt a warmth spread through her chest. It wasn't just about surviving. They had faced danger together and emerged stronger. That night, as Clara tended to the animals and helped Sam secure the ranch, she realized something important. The gang would likely return, but she was no longer the helpless girl who had run for her life. She had learned to observe, anticipate, and act. She had learned to fight for her place in this harsh land. Most importantly, she had begun to understand the power of trust and teamwork. Sam had given her a chance, and she had proven that she was worthy of it. Exhausted but proud, Clara finally sat on the porch, looking up at the endless sky filled with stars. The prairie was quiet now, and the only sounds were the gentle rustle of the grass and the soft breathing of the animals. She reflected on the events of the day and realized how much she had grown. Fear was no longer the only driver of her actions. She had courage now, skill, and a sense of belonging she had never known before. In the weeks that followed, Clara continued to hone her skills, always alert for any sign of danger. The gang had been driven off, but the lessons of survival remained. She practiced her aim, strengthened fences, and learned more about the ways of the prairie. Her bond with Sam deepened, built on respect, shared effort, and the knowledge that they could rely on each other in the face of adversity. Clara had come to the ranch as a wounded and hunted girl, desperate for safety. Now she was becoming something more, a defender, a trusted companion, and someone who had earned a place in a harsh, unpredictable world. The Wild West was still dangerous, but she had discovered a strength within herself that no danger could take away. And as she lay down to rest each night, she did so with the quiet confidence that, whatever came next, she would be ready. The dawn broke over the prairie in muted shades of gold and pink, casting long shadows across the ranch. Clara stirred, her body aching from the previous day's tension and labor. Even in the quiet of the morning, she could feel the lingering unease in the air. The threat of the gang had not disappeared, it had only been postponed. Clara knew, deep down, that it was only a matter of time before they returned. She had learned to listen to the wind, to read the movement of distant riders, and to trust her instincts. And that morning, her instincts told her danger was near. Sam moved silently around the ranch, inspecting the fences and checking on the animals. Clara joined him, carrying buckets of water and extra feed for the livestock. They worked together, their actions calm and precise. No words were needed, each understood the other's intentions, but beneath the routine there was a tense anticipation. Clara could feel her heart beat faster with every creak of the barn, every sound carried on the wind. The gang was coming back, and this time they would not be hesitant. By mid-morning, dust rose on the horizon. Clara squinted, recognizing the movement immediately. The gang had returned, more numerous than before, and their intentions were clear. They had come not just to capture her, but to take control of the ranch if necessary. Clara's pulse quickened, but she took a deep breath and steadied herself. This was the moment she had been preparing for. This was the test of everything she had learned since arriving at the ranch. Sam barked orders, moving the cattle to a safer enclosure and directing Clara to strengthen the side gates. She obeyed, her hands working quickly and efficiently, driven by both fear and determination. The gang rode closer, shouting threats, their horses kicking up clouds of dust. Clara could see their faces clearly now, rough, cruel, and confident that they would succeed, but Clara was ready. She had prepared the ranch, studied the terrain, and now she would fight not only for her life but for the home that had given her safety and hope. As the first riders approached the fence, Clara took her position with a rifle in hand. Sam moved to cover another section, and together they created a strategy to defend the ranch. Clara's mind raced as she anticipated the gang's movements. She noticed one rider trying to circle around the side where the fence was weakest. With quick thinking, she raised her rifle and fired a warning shot, causing the man to falter and fall back. Sam gave her an approving nod, and for a brief moment, Clara felt a surge of confidence. The confrontation escalated quickly. The gang began to spread out, attempting to surround the ranch. Clara stayed low, firing precise shots when necessary, while also guiding the animals to safer areas. Sam moved with practiced efficiency, intercepting any intruders who came too close. Clara realized that courage alone was not enough. Strategy, observation, and quick thinking were equally vital. She had grown in ways she had never imagined when she first stumbled onto the ranch weeks ago. In the chaos, one of the gang members managed to slip past the initial defenses and headed toward the barn. Clara noticed him just in time. Without hesitation, she ran to intercept him. Her heart pounded, her breath quickened, but she did not falter. She tackled him to the ground, struggling to keep him subdued until Sam arrived. The man was strong, but Clara's determination outweighed his brute force. Together, they restrained him and pushed him toward the center of the ranch, ensuring he could not harm the animals or the property. As the standoff continued, the rest of the gang realized that the ranch was not going to be an easy target. Clara and Sam had fortified their position, and their teamwork made them formidable opponents. Shots rang out across the prairie, echoing against the hills. Dust and smoke filled the air, and the sound of hooves pounding the ground was almost deafening. Clara's muscles ached, but she did not allow herself to stop. Every action she took was deliberate, every decision critical. She had learned to survive on her own, but now she was learning to protect not just herself but a place and a man who had trusted her. During a particularly tense moment, Clara noticed a small group of gang members attempting to corner a young calf that had wandered too close to the fence. Without thinking, she sprinted toward the animal, her rifle raised to deter the intruders. She managed to guide the calf back into the enclosure, narrowly avoiding a shot that whizzed past her. Sam reached her side immediately, both of them panting, but relieved that the animal was safe. It was a small victory, but it reinforced the strength of their combined efforts and the importance of vigilance. Hours passed like this, with constant threats and bursts of action. Clara could feel the strain in her body, her hands blistered and sore from gripping the rifle, her legs trembling from fatigue. Yet, she refused to give in. She drew on the strength she had discovered in herself over the past weeks, the same strength that had kept her alive while fleeing across the prairie. The ranch had become more than a refuge. It was a place worth defending, and she was determined to do so. The gang's morale began to falter. They had expected an easy target, a frightened girl who could be captured with little effort. Instead, they faced a woman who was quick-thinking, brave, and resourceful, standing alongside a seasoned rancher. Clara's determination and courage had turned the tide, forcing the intruders to hesitate and reconsider their approach. Sam seized the moment, positioning themselves strategically to protect the ranch and maintain control over the situation. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, the gang finally made the decision to retreat. They had underestimated their opponents and realized that continuing the fight would likely result in serious losses. Clara watched them disappear into the distance, her body aching and covered in dust, but her heart swelling with pride and relief. She had faced the threat head-on and emerged victorious. Sam approached her, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. "You did well," he he said simply, but the weight of his words carried great meaning. Clara felt a warmth spread through her chest. She had proven herself not just to Sam, but to herself. She was no longer the frightened, hunted girl who had stumbled onto the ranch weeks ago. She was a survivor, a fighter, and a protector of the home she had come to love. As the evening settled over the ranch, Clara and Sam began the task of assessing the damage. Fences needed repairs, the barn doors had minor splintering, and some of the animals were shaken, but nothing had been lost. Clara worked alongside Sam, her hands steady despite the fatigue in her muscles. She felt a deep sense of satisfaction. This was the tangible result of courage, teamwork, and determination. They had faced danger and emerged stronger because of it. That night, Clara lay on the small bed in the guest room, staring at the ceiling as the events of the day replayed in her mind. Fear had been constant, but so had courage. She realized that true bravery was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act despite it. The ranch had given her more than shelter. It had given her the chance to grow, to learn, and to prove her worth in a harsh and unforgiving world. Clara knew the gang might return again someday, but she no longer felt powerless. She had discovered a resilience she never knew existed within her. She had learned to read danger, respond decisively, and protect what mattered most. And most importantly, she had earned Sam's trust, which was a greater reward than any comfort or safety. Together they had defended the ranch, and in doing so they had forged a bond that went beyond words, a bond built on mutual respect, courage, and shared experience. As she drifted off to sleep, Clara thought of the vast prairie, the endless sky, and the life she was beginning to build. She knew that challenges lay ahead, but she also knew that she was ready. The Wild West was still unpredictable and dangerous, but she had found strength, purpose, and belonging. The battle had been fought and won, but the lessons she had learned would guide her for the rest of her life. And as the first light of a new day began to creep through the window, Clara felt a quiet sense of triumph. She had faced her fears, defended her home, and discovered the courage that had always been inside her. The days following the gang's retreat were calm, though the tension never fully disappeared. Clara rose each morning to the gentle light spilling across the prairie, feeling both relief and determination. The battle had been fought, and the ranch had survived, but she knew that life in the Wild West never offered true certainty. Every day was a chance to learn, to grow, and to prove oneself once again. Yet for the first time in weeks, Clara felt a sense of peace, a quiet confidence that she could face whatever came next. Sam and Clara worked side by side, restoring the ranch to its full strength. Broken fences were repaired, the barn was cleaned and reorganized, and the livestock were tended with extra care. Clara moved with a sense of purpose she had never known before. Every task, no matter how small, carried meaning. She had begun as a frightened, hunted girl, relying on the mercy of others for safety. Now she was an integral part of the ranch, contributing her skills, her intelligence, and her courage to its survival. Sam watched her quietly, noting the changes. Clara was no longer hesitant or unsure. She handled the horses with confidence, repaired fences without guidance, and made careful, thoughtful decisions when challenges arose. Her presence was no longer a burden but a vital force on the ranch. Sam began to trust her completely, leaving her in charge of certain tasks while he attended to other responsibilities. Their bond had transformed from cautious trust to mutual respect and understanding, a partnership forged through shared danger and perseverance. One afternoon, Clara walked along the edge of the pasture, checking the fences and ensuring that the gates were secure. The wind carried the faint smell of distant wildflowers, and the prairie seemed to stretch endlessly beneath the wide, open sky. For a moment she allowed herself to simply breathe, feeling the sun on her face and the solid earth beneath her boots. It was a simple pleasure, yet one she had not felt in months. The freedom to feel safe, even briefly, was a gift she cherished deeply. Clara thought about the journey that had brought her here. She remembered the fear that had driven her across the prairie, the relentless pursuit of the gang, and the desperate plea that had brought her to Sam's door. She had come seeking refuge, and she had found more than that. She had found a home, a sense of purpose, and a man who believed in her. It was a rare thing in a world as harsh and unforgiving as the Wild West, and she vowed not to take it for granted. Sam joined her, carrying a small bundle of firewood. He nodded toward the distant hills. "Quiet out there today," he said. "We should enjoy it while it lasts. You've done well, Clara, more than I could have hoped for." Clara smiled, feeling warmth spread through her chest. The praise meant more than she could express. It wasn't just about the work she had done. It was about proving herself, showing courage, and building a place where she belonged. The following weeks were a time of quiet rebuilding and reflection. Clara continued to hone her skills, learning more about the ways of the prairie and the needs of the ranch. She became proficient with the rifle, adept at tracking and observing wildlife, and skilled at anticipating problems before they arose. Sam taught her everything he could, and she absorbed it eagerly, knowing that knowledge and preparedness were the keys to survival in this land. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon in brilliant hues of orange and red, Clara sat on the porch with Sam, enjoying a rare moment of stillness. The animals were settled for the night, and the wind carried only the soft rustling of grass and distant cries of coyotes. Clara spoke softly, almost to herself. "I never thought I'd find a place like this, a place where I can feel safe and useful." Sam nodded, understanding the depth of her words. "It takes courage to get here," he replied, "and you've shown plenty of it. You belong here, Clara." "You always have." Clara's heart swelled with emotion. The journey that had begun with fear and desperation had led her to a place of stability and trust. She had learned that true strength came not only from physical ability but from resilience, intelligence, and the willingness to act when it mattered most. She had faced danger, protected those she cared about, and earned the trust of a man who had once been a stranger. She felt proud, not only of surviving but of growing into someone capable of making a difference. The ranch became more than just a home, it became a symbol of her transformation. Clara took pride in the fences she repaired, the animals she cared for, and the land she helped cultivate. Each day was a reminder of how far she had come, from a hunted girl running through the wilderness to a confident, capable woman standing her ground. The lessons of the past weeks remained with her, shaping her decisions, her courage, and her sense of purpose. One morning, Clara noticed signs of life on the horizon, dust rising from a distant trail. Her heart beat faster but not with fear. She approached Sam calmly. "Looks like travelers," she said, squinting. "Nothing to worry about, but we should keep watch." Sam nodded. "Good eyes, you're learning fast." Clara felt a quiet satisfaction. She no longer felt powerless in the face of uncertainty. She could observe, assess, and act with confidence. The world outside might be unpredictable, but she had found her place within it. Weeks turned into months, and the ranch continued to thrive. Clara's bond with Sam grew stronger. They shared quiet meals, worked together in the fields, and relied on each other's judgment. She began to understand the rhythms of the land, the behavior of the animals, and the practicalities of surviving and thriving in the Wild West. Every day was a lesson, every task an opportunity to strengthen her skills and contribute to the ranch's success. One evening, as Clara and Sam watched the sunset over the distant hills, she reflected on her journey. She had come to the ranch wounded, hunted, and uncertain of her future. She had begged for shelter, promising to repay the kindness of a man she barely knew. And over time, through courage, determination, and hard work, she had not only repaid that trust but had earned a place of respect, belonging, and purpose. The ranch was no longer just a refuge, it was home. Clara realized that the Wild West, with all its dangers and unpredictability, had taught her invaluable lessons. Courage was not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. Trust was earned through deeds, not words. Strength came not only from physical skill but from resilience, intelligence, and compassion. And most importantly, hope could be found even in the harshest and most unforgiving places, if one had the courage to seek it. As the first stars appeared in the night sky, Clara felt a profound sense of gratitude. She had survived the wilderness, faced danger, and proven herself in ways she had never imagined. She had built a home from scratch, earned the trust of a man who had once been a stranger, and discovered a strength within herself that she had never known existed. And in that moment, she understood that survival was only the beginning. Life, courage, and the bonds we form along the way were what truly mattered. Sam placed a hand on her shoulder, breaking her thoughts. "You've changed this place," he said quietly. "And you've changed me too. We make a good team, Clara." "I trust you with everything here." Clara looked at him, feeling the depth of the statement. It was not just about work or survival, it was about respect, partnership, and shared experience. She nodded, feeling a quiet pride. "Thank you, Sam. I've learned a lot. And I'm not leaving. This is where I belong." The prairie stretched endlessly before them, a world both beautiful and dangerous. Clara knew that challenges would come again, that life in the Wild West would never be without risk, but she no longer felt powerless. She had found strength, courage, and a home. She had survived the hunt, faced danger, and proven herself worthy of trust and respect. And as she looked out across the rolling hills and golden fields, she knew that whatever came next, she would face it with determination and hope. The ranch thrived under their care. The animals were healthy, the land was well tended, and the fences stood strong against any intruder. Clara had become an integral part of this life, a figure of courage and reliability. The story of the girl who had begged for shelter and promised to repay her savior quietly spread among nearby townsfolk as a tale of resilience and bravery. Yet Clara cared little for fame. What mattered was the sense of belonging, the bond she had formed, and the knowledge that she had faced her fears and won. Life settled into a rhythm. Clara worked hard, learned more about the land, and continued to grow in skill and confidence. She had found safety, purpose, and family in the form of Sam and the ranch. Each day brought challenges, yes, but also rewards, moments of quiet reflection, laughter, and satisfaction. The Wild West remained a harsh and unpredictable world, but Clara had discovered the strength within herself to face it with courage and resilience. And so, Clara's journey came full circle. From a hunted and wounded girl begging for refuge, she had transformed into a confident, capable woman who had earned trust, respect, and a place to call home. The ranch was more than a building. It was a symbol of her growth, her courage, and the bonds she had forged through determination and hard work. Clara knew that life would continue to test her, but she also knew that she was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. In the vast and untamed West, she had found strength, hope, and belonging, and that was worth more than anything she had ever imagined.